In the same marketing firm, my wife Lucy and I work side by, although her role, referred to as a customer ambassador, remains somewhat vague to me. Primarily, it appears she liaises with clients, yet the specifics of her job duties are unclear. As for myself, I head the IT department. Our lives were harmonious. We were gainfully employed, content, completed renovating our once dilapidated home, and blessed with two delightful children, Emma 13 and Daniel 11. We reside near our kin and cherish close friendships. Both of us are beyond 30 years old, complementing each other exceptionally well. In terms of physical appearance, Lucy stands at approximately 1.75 meters tall with long blonde tresses and striking blue eyes. She maintains that her family hails from Sweden and possesses Scandinavian features. Slim, radiant, and energetic, she seldom remains idle. I share her height and sport sandy hair, favoring endurance sports like cycling and running. Consequently, my physique is lean, yet athleticism is not overtly showcased. I was taken aback upon receiving an invitation for a prolonged weekend on Jack Edwards' private island, a client of our company. Our CEO disclosed that Jack, his spouse Margaret, several directors, and their companions were also attending. Lucy, being the primary point of contact for the client, was invited as well. It seemed I was there to handle financial matters, yet one doesn't question a generous offer. Jack mentioned that the client possessed vast wealth and could potentially expand our firm significantly. We were scheduled to depart early Friday morning and return on Monday, courtesy of a private jet, with all necessities covered. Lucy appeared fully informed upon my mentioning it on our way home. She had been collaborating with the client for several months and expressed enthusiasm about the complimentary weekend. I inquired about the weekend details from her, but she didn't seem to know much, so I probed about the client instead. William Fellows, whom Lucy introduced, is in his mid-40s, boasts self-assurance, and possesses the family fortune. She appeared intrigued, labeling him as bossy and reserved. I mentally noted that he seemed arrogant, but decided to keep this observation hidden until the weekend. 2 weeks later, on a Friday morning, we were aboard a private charter plane. Admittedly, I was impressed. If the island belonged to him, he must be exceptionally well prepared. I wasn't sure about my expectations, but it appeared massive, possibly spanning 5 miles long and a couple of miles wide based on our landing view. It resembled a 5-star resort, with its main structures nestled behind a crescent-shaped white sandy beach. Lucy was ecstatic, and the others weren't far behind in their excitement. We were escorted to our rooms, followed by lunch with our host on a veranda overlooking the bay. Despite my initial inclination, William appeared as a reasonable man. Lucy described him as unremarkable, but he resembled George Clooney. He welcomed us and encouraged us to feel at ease. We conversed with the other 3 couples from our company and encountered an attractive brunette named Charlotte, whom I assumed was William's weekend companion. Apart from the wait staff, a man who appeared to be a security guard lurked in the periphery, which led me to ponder the nature of William's adversaries, that even on this isolated island, he needed protection. William greeted Lucy warmly, and they displayed an ease with each other. She and the others seemed to comply with most of his suggestions. I guess this was expected, as he was an exceptional host and their most valuable client. Spent a lovely afternoon swimming, paddling, and leisurely lounging in the bay, with unlimited drinks and meals provided. We later shared an enjoyable dinner with our group companions, fostering a congenial and laid-back ambience as we engaged in casual conversations in small clusters. Charlotte introduced herself to us. She was charming and reminisced about her childhood in England, giving an impression of a well-off family background, but displaying genuine warmth. I speculated if she was a model or independently wealthy. To my astonishment, she exhibited flirtatious behavior towards me, even with Lucy present. I tactfully navigated this by attributing it to excessive friendliness, a lack of children, leisure time, and the picturesque location, ideal for a romantic evening. Lucy was affectionate, and our intimacy was passionate. On numerous occasions, she professed her love for me. It was one of the best nights in quite some time. Perhaps there's some truth to the Love Island concept. The next morning, I expected another round, but Lucy promptly showered and was ready for breakfast. Eventually, I emerged from bed and joined her as she chatted with Jack and William. I pondered if their conversation revolved around work, considering the somewhat tense expressions on both Jack and Lucy's faces. Maybe William was manipulating the weekend to insert something work-related into their discussions. As I approached, the dialogue ceased, and following a brief snack, we all resumed enjoying another picturesque day by the pool. On Saturday, we dined out, and I observed that Lucy had become more formally dressed. She looked breathtaking in a red satin evening gown and heels. Afterward, William inquired if we could spare a few moments. We consented and accompanied him to his office, trailed by a security guard. Settling into a high-backed leather chair, William was joined by me on the sofa across from Lucy. I observed that she kept her distance, seated away from me. After a lengthy pause, William began speaking. "You've got a personal suggestion for me, Mark. After spending the last few months working with Lucy and getting to know her better, I must say it's been delightful. We have developed a wonderful rapport and relationship. There seems to be a pause as if waiting for my response, but I am clueless about his intentions, although the mention of relationship causes me some discomfort." He proceeds casually, presenting his idea. "I want to spend the weekend with Lucy. If she has to forego her time with you, rest assured, I will make it up by transferring $100,000 into our shared account as compensation." I attempted a jest in response. "Seems like you're stingy, William. Wasn't Robert Redford offering more than £1 million for Demi Moore?" No one laughed anymore after that. In any business, I'm open to discussing pricing terms to secure my goals, and it'd be nice if you'd consent to accommodate Charlotte. Turning to Lucy, I expected a smile, but instead, I saw concern. "This isn't a jest, Mark." William extended an invitation, and I believe we should give this offer due thought. Though anger surged within me, the guard's proximity prevented any outburst. Impressive, I hadn't even noticed his approach. William persisted, reassuring that your wife endorses this plan wholeheartedly. "What's the risk? It promises fun for all and substantial earnings." Addressing Lucy, perhaps the price discrepancy is due to Demi Moore not finding it worth that amount. Lucy winced at my remark, but held her tongue. Struggling to think amidst my rapidly worsening breathing, I cast a wary eye on the guard. His gaze seemed fixed on my actions, and it was no surprise I harbored a strong desire to strike William, his smug face a constant temptation. "What's your name?" I asked, sensing a military background from him. "Shane," he replied cryptically. "I can't discuss this matter." He seemed to smile at my agitation. Turning to William, I spat out, "Thank goodness you brought Shane here. Otherwise, I would have pulverized you." Unfazed, William just stood there. Lucy chimed in next. "Mark, consider it carefully. In a couple of days, money will transform our lives irrevocably." I was struck by her determination and complicity. "Lucy," I asked, "did the promise of money entice you into this as well?" Without response, I pressed on, suspecting Charlotte might have been offered an inducement as well. "Is she a prostitute?" To this, William retorted, "Charlotte is simply my friend. Moreover, she's a high-class escort with a selective clientele. Be advised, the experience will be unique. I suppose that makes them both sex workers." Lucy winced again, but offered no concession words. "Well, William, you can invest your funds in the fragrance of your anus." It was at this juncture that Lucy spoke, revealing her true sentiments. "This is my body, and I desire to engage. It's just sex, and we may explore it with others. William and I have affection for each other, but that doesn't alter our love. I am confident you and Charlotte will enjoy your time together as well." Her words left me speechless, gradually sinking in. "The contrast, my dear wife, is that I don't yearn for anyone else, and this goes beyond what you can imagine. You're accusing me of deceit and collusion, yet I cannot trust you anymore due to this incident. If you've done it once, why not do it again?" In response, Lucy calmly asserted that I am overreacting. She explained that the matter isn't a secret or a plot since we discussed it, and she is completely truthful. "This action will occur, after which she will return, fully yours. If you truly love me, let me have this one thing. Ponder on how we can utilize our funds, vacations with the kids, all of it. Dare not use our children as an excuse. We don't require money, and I won't take you back. Your honesty will only work if we agree on something together, and the only person you agree on anything with is this pompous one. Money is merely an excuse you desire to proceed with your plan. I believe the money and Charlotte are merely because you didn't anticipate my agreement. Indeed, even with the money, I still don't consent. Lucy added, "You're right. I want to do this." Desiring something fresh and distinct, drawn to William, yet wishing to avoid causing harm, this is my predicament. I prefer to stay as I am, and it seems you deem this the better option. Have you already decided, even preparing for it? Resist not, my love. The repercussions won't be pleasant if you persist or opt for a separation. You stand to lose everything: home, children, job security, with no need for such turmoil. So just accept it. Life will be much smoother. See you tomorrow, and remember, I love only you. The air felt constricting, and staying would have sent me over the edge. I rose shakily and headed towards the door. I heard Lucy calling my name, but I continued walking. In the hallway, Charlotte approached me, embraced me, assuring everything would be all right. I looked at her. "Are you a consolation prize?" She strode away with her head upright. I continued walking and eventually found myself outside, halfway across the yard, but I didn't feel great. Footsteps followed behind me, and it was Shane, not Lucy, whom I had hoped to see. "Shane, back off," I told him. "I appreciate it, but I need to ensure you don't make any reckless decisions." I inquired if he had any suggestions, to which he replied he didn't. "You seem unwell, Mark. Just lean against the wall, pull your knees up, and concentrate on deep, slow breaths," Shane advised. After some time, I regained my composure. "Thank you." "I'm not sure what it was, possibly a panic or anxiety attack," I admitted. Shane replied, "You looked quite pale, but now you seem more rosy." About foolish ideas, I asked if there was an escape from this predicament. Shane responded, seriously, "Leaving the island today isn't feasible. There are no boats. The plane and pilot departed for another charter. Perhaps you could call for assistance, but infidelity hardly constitutes an emergency. I'm glad you suspect her of being unfaithful. She appears oblivious to this, and I'm starting to doubt my own judgment. What should I do?" I inquired. "Because of you, I can't even confront him physically," I stated. "Yes, my apologies for that. I would like to step aside, but I'll likely never find another job again," Shane went on. "Listen, consider your actions and devise a strategy. Whatever you decide can wait until Monday. It's like in the military. Formulate a plan, remain calm, and keep your intentions hidden," Shane advised. "The issue is that I have no idea what to do. They seem to have everything under control, and I will have to endure tomorrow and Monday while you watch over me," I responded. After a lengthy pause, Shane suggested, "A ship is expected early Monday morning with cargo. If you wish, you can take it to avoid the crowded plane heading home. You can't be stopped. Neither I nor others wish to be associated with kidnapping or incarceration. I could accompany you if needed. This arrangement is losing its appeal. I dislike being on the wrong side, even if it comes with financial benefits. All right, let's help each other out. All I need is to get through today. How about we go for a hike around the island tomorrow morning to distract ourselves from this mess? Plus, you should consider Charlotte. She's an exceptional girl, and it seems like you have nothing to lose," Shane proposed. "I'll return there. Who knows, maybe she might change her mind," I replied. But alas, she didn't. However, strangely enough, I found myself drifting off to sleep. I believe exhaustion was the culprit. The next day, I donned my gym attire and rushed down the stairs, hoping to evade everyone and go on my date with Shane. Unfortunately, as soon as I stepped into the dining room, it fell silent. I looked for a quick meal and grabbed some fruit. Overheard chatter, comments about everything being smooth. "Not a big issue," she'll return. Then CFO John Cousins arrived with his wife. "We've all been through this, just let it unfold. It's impersonal," he mentioned. At that point, Lucy and William emerged. She seemed quite self-satisfied, almost glowing if I had to describe it. but her smile vanished as soon as she noticed me. She detached herself from his grasp and approached me for a kiss or hug. I kept my distance and scanned the room. Goodness, I thought, what a complete idiot. Everyone knew what was going to happen before the weekend even began. How foolish of me. I left. Lucy spoke up. Stay, Mark. We can converse with the group and enjoy another pleasant day together. I glanced around. All gazes were locked on me, some eager, others amused by the spectacle. No, he bought you and can keep you. Prior to departing, there are some things I must share with the group. Given that this gathering has been arranged well in advance, and everyone here is aware of it, I believe it's only right that you all listen to what I have to say. A wave of shock washed over the group as they exchanged nervous glances. Jack and Margaret, I wouldn't have attended this weekend if not for your presence. It never crossed my mind that you'd be associated with something so despicable. You seem to endorse and condone his actions, acting like a fan club of perverted spectators. I can't help but suspect you enjoyed keeping me in the dark. It seems clear now that this wasn't part of your initial plans. Despite our friendship, it appears you orchestrated everything to set up the arrangements. And no, Bill, this is deeply personal, so thank you for your role in ruining my marriage. The fact that you are willing to use my children as leverage is truly appalling. I will not tolerate anyone threatening my children. You're exaggerating the situation. It was just a temporary mistake, an instant interaction that shouldn't disrupt our relationship. I've already expressed my affection for you. However, it seems like you're trying to minimize it. Are you deflecting? I understand you had a strategy prepared for how I would respond, given your leadership role. So let's examine your plan. Firstly, we remain in the same place, and you gradually normalize the situation before we return home. Your associates likely discussed this seriously, addressing the issue proactively on your behalf. Undoubtedly, you expect me to suppress my ego, avoid overreacting, and accept the situation calmly. After all, it's just my self-esteem, isn't it? You realize it's a futile attempt, but hey, it's part of the gradual acceptance process. So for Phase B, once the weekend ends, you'll hand over control to me. We'll reconnect physically, possibly even exploring new avenues of intimacy. Utilizing your connections will strengthen our relationship and come out more robust than before. It wouldn't be unexpected if you've devised means to charm me. To be frank, dear, it's natural for you not to let my grief linger excessively. Lucy looked at William uneasily, suggesting that my comment resonated with her. Furthermore, we'll have the funds he promised you available. With the profits from your ventures, we can take the kids to Disneyland and encounter Mickey. These words prompted visible responses from various people, as evidenced by their cameras. If our disagreements persist, Plan B will be implemented. You planted that seed last night. If I truly love you, then I should permit you to carry out this act. For 15 years, you've been an exceptional wife, and this is merely one night for you. Yes, this may cause doubts in my resolve, but what reward do I receive after 15 years of loyalty if I'm treated poorly? You knew I wouldn't consent, yet you attack me without any regard. Therefore, your scheme won't succeed. Now, there's a hint of concern from your end. Perhaps it would be wiser for me to calm down first. In about a week or two, you might discover me drinking away my sorrows at some bar and then seek forgiveness. This is Phase D. However, you now regret everything that has happened. You didn't anticipate the depth of pain it would cause me, and if you had known, you wouldn't have done it. You love me, plead for mercy, weep, and so on. I must acknowledge that there's a glimmer of hope for you, but your recent actions strolling openly hand in hand with him and seeming so content has made me believe that you feel neither guilt nor remorse, only disdain and a desire to embarrass me. Phase D seems futile in this case. Consequently, an alternative strategy, Phase E, may need to be implemented. This involves threats. You plan to take all our money, the house, and even turn the children against me. You've also hinted that I might lose my job. William is prepared to pay for top-notch lawyers. My life will end in sadness, poverty, and isolation if this happens. You could suggest cohabiting with him and spending the rest of our lives together with the children. William swiftly lifted his head, hinting at a chuckle. Seems like your partner isn't keen on having the kids, dear. Eventually, Lucy managed to speak up. It's not such a major issue, she started. Why don't we just take a breather and give ourselves time to ponder? This is scenario A, Lucy. We've faced this before, I asserted. So let's spare everyone the trouble and proceed straight to the conclusion. This was my thought process last night, and my conclusion is that we all, including the children, would benefit more if we divorced. This seems a lot healthier than living in an unhappily married home. In the end, you can't find happiness when you're doing this, and I certainly am not. You may try to prevent me from seeing my kids, but you know I'm a good parent, and that's beneficial for them, and they've grown old enough to comprehend. Your loved ones likely won't back you, given your actions. Money means nothing to me. It's always been about you. A stunned silence filled the room, eyes wide like startled goldfish. Any more advice from your cronies? Did I miss anything? No, no need to think. By the way, Jack, you can stick that job where the sun doesn't shine. I'll be suing for wrongful termination. My job hinges on the client and my wife. Seems like that's the issue here. With that said, I left. The air was heavy with tension. Shane followed me as usual. Upon leaving, Shane chuckled. Well played. It seems you heeded the advice to keep your plans secret. I couldn't help but smile. Yes, it looks like this idea of yours has failed. Shane even laughed. As we exited the building, it's a good thing you remained a civilian. You wouldn't have found success in the army. Let's go. Shane picked up his backpack and began walking at a leisurely pace along the coastline. After a mile, I struggled to match his pace, doubts creeping in about my choice to follow him. He called out from ahead, suggesting that enduring physical pain helps distract from mental distress. My straining muscles and lungs seemed to concur. The landscape was stunning, with Shane enjoying himself. He switched the conversation from me to amusing tales from his military service in Britain. For several hours, we circled the northern part of the island, scaling the coastline. We aimed for a high vantage point at the center. I caught my breath barely when Shane suggested we run back as it was all downhill. I could hardly keep pace with him, but I thought he might be slowing down to either encourage or tease me, depending on perspective. We arrived around noon, me gasping for air and feeling drained, telling Shane that prior to today, I believed myself to be in good shape. He showed little signs of being out of breath, yet graciously commented on my fitness level and mentioned that as a military physical education instructor, he wouldn't be overly concerned about me. Exhausted, I made my way to my room where Lucy was absent, prompting me to ponder if she was earning an additional income. After freshening up, I found myself quite famished and headed towards the dining room in search of sustenance, only to find William and Lucy present once more. Shane was there too, seemingly effortlessly tucked away in the background. He looked as fresh as a daisy, impeccably dressed in a suit. William spoke with his customary air of confidence. My dear friend Mark, I feel we've embarked on the wrong footing and I wish to apologize. Such issues have never arisen in my relationships before, and I assure you, I don't intend to endanger your marriage. Unfortunately, it's already happened, I responded. I wish to retract my request for this evening with your wife and offer an increased compensation instead. With these words, William gave me a paper. Upon opening it, I saw a check for $250,000. I looked at Lucy, who appeared to be crying, and I was unable to hide my reaction. You must have done something impressive to deserve that sum, sweetheart. Lucy's eyes filled with anger. That's not the issue. We made a serious error, and we are trying to rectify it. William behaved impeccably and genuinely expressed concern about your response. I found humor in his comment. What do you consider an ideal gentleman? Did he express gratitude after he finished intimacy with you? There's no need for jesting, Mark. This is merely a misunderstanding regarding your feelings towards the situation. It was a unique, life-changing event for both of us. You should be thankful to Lucy for making such a selfless gesture to improve your and your children's lives. I find it hard to believe this is just a misunderstanding. I made my opinions on your plan quite clear, but you both proceeded regardless. At any given moment, you had the chance to halt everything, yet you chose to act only after obtaining your desired satisfaction. You also anticipated this outcome in advance, as evident by my ripping up the bill. In essence, I spared you from becoming a villain. However, the deception aspect remains unresolved, and I'm afraid it cannot be rectified this time. Her sorrow was immediate. I sought help from others. Why are you committing these acts? Is it for dominance or the excitement of another man's wife? In any case, it makes you a pitiful individual. Alas, at 48 years old, you behave as if snatching toys because you can. Shouldn't you focus on more significant matters instead? William chuckled in response. I oversee an international corporation and donate millions to charity. I have plenty to keep me occupied. According to my findings from last night, you inherited this corporation, which has been dwindling under your leadership. When it comes to charitable events like galas, dinners, and fundraisers, they must be quite challenging for you. Have you recently taken action to aid someone, gotten involved directly, instead of just being absorbed in yourself and your games? I'm not sure you possess that capacity. Your self-centeredness and preoccupation with others seem alarming. The manner in which you publicly arrange weekends suggests a perverse delight in embarrassing people. I'm sorry, Lucy, but it wasn't just about him wanting you. He desires every board member's wife, making you one of many. William, maybe it's time for you to mature, form genuine relationships, use your wealth constructively, and stop being so self-centered. For the first time, I saw him falter in his words and appear uncertain. I continued, Shane, ensure that wretched individual stays out of my sight or face the consequences. After observing Shane suppress a smile, he advised his companions, it seems we should depart, sir, to prevent any potential danger. After they left, I grabbed a snack and went down to the beach, trying to steer clear of others. Upon thinking I was the only one on the shore, I spotted Charlotte lounging in a hammock, engrossed in a book. Her beauty previously striking, her smile now radiantly captivating. Stepping towards her, I apologized for the previous night. Before I could carry on, she dismissed my apology, stating she had anticipated my response. If I had known, I wouldn't have approached you, she added. Your reaction is reasonable, and your breakfast speech was exceptional. I wholeheartedly concur. Upon departing, Lucy wept, and William appeared uncomfortable, a sight I hadn't seen before. The entire experience was delightful. I'm sorry for my earlier comment given your circumstances, I replied. Thank you. I'm glad that things are becoming more apparent. I've grown tired of being told this is unfounded. It seems William doesn't know how to handle you. Has he offered you additional funds? Yes, moments before it happened. Approximately 250,000. Foolish man. I warned him against it, but he's always used to paying until he gets what he wants. He will bear the consequences for this, both in his business and personally. Charlotte was easy to converse with, attentively listening as I spoke about my marriage and children. She appeared intelligent and well-educated. She seemed surprised that Lucy would do such a thing while seemingly content in her marriage, implying some sort of dissatisfaction or open agreement between us. I pondered the matter. No, it was just an unforeseen attack. She seems utterly captivated by this man. He has that effect on women. It's all quite charming, but the water isn't very deep if you understand my meaning. We continued talking, and I felt somewhat relieved. I believe you genuinely love her. Your response to the proposals and at breakfast must be tearing your heart apart, she said. I shrugged nonchalantly. I'm sorry that I was involved in this. It's not your fault. Needing to endure one more night before potentially fleeing, then perhaps I might escape. She smiled once more, becoming increasingly captivating. Perhaps I can offer some assistance in the meantime. The evening meal took everyone by surprise when I joined. Lucy no longer occupied William's seat next to her. Despite the ordinary nature of the meal, I chose to disregard Lucy's attempts at casual conversation. When Lucy inquired if I wished to retire early, I returned a polite smile and revealed my alternative plans. She seemed embarrassed, and her embarrassment deepened when Charlotte encircled me while I stood up at the table. We exited the hall together. We made our way towards the cabins on the beach. Initially, the plan was merely to depart together and teach Lucy a lesson, but Charlotte felt comfortable in my arms. Extremely comfortable. And as we kissed, some of the disappointment from the past 24 hours began to dissipate. I contemplated upholding my principles, my sense of right and wrong, but then I glanced at her. It appears Lucy desired more flexibility from me, and as it stands, our marriage vows seem to have been breached by her. Last night was exceptional with Charlotte. It wasn't solely about her attractiveness. She exuded a tranquil sensuality. Each movement of hers seemed meticulously planned and timed to perfection. She undeniably was a master of her art. To my surprise, I didn't ponder Lucy nor felt remorseful. The distressing recollection of Lucy with William swiftly erased any lingering regret. I enjoyed myself. A boat ride, taxi to the airport, and then the routine flight home followed. Upon returning, I collected the kids and arranged their weekend activities as feasibly as possible. I concocted a vague tale about a disagreement between their mother and me, but that we would reconcile and were merely suggesting dinner. However, Lucy strolled into the house dragging our bulky luggage. The children dashed upstairs to prepare, greeting her with "Hi, Mom." Lucy smiled. "Dinner is a fine idea. If you give me a moment, I'll get dressed." "I prefer you not to do that, Lucy." "You're correct. I'm unsure about the duration of our time together, so I prefer us to go solo, Lucy." Upon meeting William, an instant connection sparked. He exuded dashing confidence, strength, and a certain charisma reminiscent of classic movie characters. However, in Mark's presence, he seemed different, neither dashing nor confident. Dinner dates ensued from flirting, leaving me lightheaded. After dinner, William kissed me goodnight, nearly causing me to dissolve. I confessed my feelings to him, and he mentioned some of his relationships were open. I pondered if Mark could be open to it. When William suggested such an arrangement, I considered the money as justification. Jack backed me up, and we started plotting weekend plans. The weekend went splendidly. I enjoyed myself with Mark, nearly forgetting the entire affair if only I could. William assured me everything would be all right and to take things easy. He and Jack had predicted Mark would dismiss the idea, yet grant him time to compose himself. However, Mark acted in an unexpected manner. The greatest surprise was his appearance of ill health. I felt the urge to chase after him, but William assured me everything would be all right. He requested Charlotte's presence, so when Mark failed to return, I assumed he was with her. This news eased my worry, and after a long wait, I yearned for time with William. As soon as he kissed me, I realized my efforts were successful. He guided me into his bedroom, and before I could remove my clothes, I felt an immediate excitement. William treated me like a fragile trophy, making me feel special. Despite his advanced age, he was in great physical condition. I had no complaints about his physique or his manhood. Upon reaching for him, William retreated and began to kiss my entire body, leaving no inch untouched. Gradually reading my response, he seemed attuned to my desires and reactions. My initial climax arrived swiftly due to his skilled touches. After regaining consciousness, he stood and passionately kissed me. He proved himself an adept lover. I was taken aback by the intense sensations flooding my body. Now I found myself fully captivated by desire. He escalated his pace and began to assert himself forcefully. As another climax neared, William followed suit. Eventually, we both found solace in each other's embrace. During the night, I awoke disoriented, thinking I was with Mark, only to find another man beside me. Overwhelmed, I questioned where Mark might be and how he felt. It appeared I had disturbed William because he stirred, and my guilt dissipated when he kissed me again, leading us back into intimacy. This morning, while brushing my teeth, William approached from behind. He seemed unquenchable in his desires. We returned to the bed, entwining our hands, prior to me maneuvering him onto his back and perching myself astride, enchanted by the rapture and longing gleaming in his eyes. Once more, it harmonized with our mutual culmination. It surpassed my expectations, leaving me elated. I bestowed a kiss upon William and expressed gratitude for an exceptional evening. It seemed organic to clasp his hand as we descended the stairs and entered the dining room, anticipating another such night. However, upon glancing at Mark, all semblance of order crumbled. My heart raced when Mark erupted in fury. It seemed everything was destined to unravel. His denial of spending the night with Charlotte was evident. Even without this revelation, I had assumed he would depart, yet his rage took me by surprise. What alarmed me most was his frosty wrath. Mark, ordinarily, was a paragon of reason. Yet his arguments, bolstered by William, seemed more persuasive when I presented my own, leaving me at a loss. Mark swiftly overpowered them all within 5 minutes, leaving them feeble and pathetic in my eyes. I struggled to maintain my ground, but soon recognized my defeat following his departure. Overwhelmed, I broke down into uncontrollable sobs. For the first time, William appeared uncertain. Once I regained consciousness, I sought out William, but couldn't find him. Jack and William later suggested halting our endeavors by offering additional funds. When we offered Mark extra money that day, I was taken aback by the turn of events. William's influence seemed to dwindle significantly, making him seem insignificant. Prior to this, his dominance left me trusting his words completely, but now his authority had been undermined significantly. He assured me we could enjoy ourselves without compromising my marriage. However, this plan disintegrated, and I was filled with doubt. My anger surged irrationally, leading me to believe I would remain on the island longer for amusement, but surprised by Jack's calm yet cruel response. "Lucy, don't act so foolishly. If you hope to salvage your marriage at all, you should express sincere remorse. Be truthful and genuine in your words, since he doesn't seem open to changing his mind." I couldn't find fault with anything he said during breakfast. It left me even more stunned when Jack informed William that things would never be the same again. He went on to say that Mark was a good man who didn't deserve the trouble we caused, and advised William to mature up. It surprised me that Mark attended the evening meal. I attempted to converse with him, but he just disregarded me. When he departed with Charlotte, I felt utterly dejected. I considered chasing after him, but what could I say given that I essentially encouraged him and spent most of the trip justifying frivolous sexual encounters? Feeling enraged and betrayed, a past transgression with Mark resurfaced, worsened by its calculated and public nature. I believe I've earned this, at least. It might keep us together if we both indulge in infidelity. The flight home without Mark made me recognize the turmoil in our marriage, as he had already departed from the island before us. Since then, I haven't engaged in a meaningful conversation with him. Awareness of my actions grew, and I was overcome by guilt. Memories of money flashed through my mind. Who could refuse such an immense sum? My tears escalated into uncontrollable sobs verging on hysteria, worrying Jack and Margaret about my state. At home, Mark was present, but he refused for me to share dinner with him and the children, and I almost held out until they left before collapsing in tears again. My exclusion from dinner felt like a grim forebode of what was to come in my life. Upon regaining consciousness, I pondered frantically about how to address the situation when Mark came back. However, everything I thought sounded repetitive of what he had already stated, and I was ashamed to seek advice from my mother or friends. Upon our return home, the children retreated to their rooms as usual, engrossed in video games and phones. In the kitchen stood Lucy, a stranger to me. She almost whispered, "Can we talk?" I nodded, figuring we'd discuss it eventually, but there was no need to prolong it. I apologized to Mark, assuring him it was only once, and I would remain faithful as before the weekend. I did it for the money. It could transform our lives as a family. I did it for us. You did it for yourself. We were content before, with no financial issues. You leaped into his bed without hesitation. It appears you attended an upscale dinner followed by an encounter overall. Everyone enjoyed themselves. However, you were overreacting unnecessarily. This incident shouldn't hold much weight. I suggest you skip the first stage, Lucy. You understand why. This wasn't a casual affair. It was a premeditated act of deceit. Arrogance, self-centeredness traits I despise, and now I dislike you immensely for this. Indeed, you repeated the same transgression. No, I did not. I retaliated because nothing seems to penetrate your consciousness. You failed to lift your head from your own affairs to consider my feelings. If I had a loyal spouse, I wouldn't have considered such an action. I hope it causes you pain, deep, unrelenting pain, so you can comprehend what I feel. Interestingly, this wasn't pre-planned. and I didn't coordinate with others to execute this, making myself seem foolish in the process. By the way, how long did your well-orchestrated scheme take, and was this your first time with him? Her eyes widened at this revelation, but then she seemed to understand that this was a genuine and logical question. For the first time during our dinner together, I recognized his affection towards me. It seemed Jack and Margaret were gauging my feelings as well. In an unusual turn for my marriage, I found myself experiencing attraction towards another man. His self-assuredness was tantalizing. Though I knew it was inappropriate, I fought against my inclinations to avoid an affair. Later, William proposed the idea of discussing our relationship's expansion and your thoughts on change. We briefly discussed this one evening, yet it was evident that you wouldn't consent. Then he suggested presenting a proposal with monetary incentive as a means to convince you. As the trip drew nearer, he recommended inviting Charlotte in hopes that would secure your agreement. I disliked the idea, but at that point, I merely wanted the plan to materialize. Despite any reservations you might harbor, I believed we could recover from this situation. At breakfast, you dismantled my plans so efficiently, and it was then that I started to comprehend the repercussions of my actions. Was it worth it? Certainly not. I was too captivated by him and listened attentively to his words. I never intended to cause you pain. Indeed, I find myself in phase D, unintentional harm. You appeared to relish this situation. It was evident during breakfast, and now you're merely telling me what I want to hear. Regretfully, the truth is that I enjoyed it. He was skilled. It's not about size or superiority, it's simply different. It was intriguing, a novelty that fascinated me. He is knowledgeable and competent, but this was a one-time event. Please don't leave us and dismantle our family over an isolated incident. I found myself smirking ironically. Strangely enough, that's precisely how I would describe your actions dismantling our family due to a single act. The blame lies with you, not me. You are correct. It is my fault. I am deeply sorry. I love you wholeheartedly, but not entirely so, for some part was given to another. Regardless of your assertion that no such act transpired, your affection seemed insufficient to maintain my loyalty. How can I believe in you anew? It never crossed my mind that you were capable of such actions. I feel as though I don't truly comprehend who you are. The very thought of facing you is agonizing, let alone feigning ignorance of this incident. Upon hearing your words, Lucy flinched in disbelief. You can't claim love for me. I was certain that I could never lose you. I concur. All you considered were yourself and your own desires, neglecting my needs and our children. Nevertheless, love may not always be enough. I attempted to regain composure and steer clear of scoring points or anger. Following a protracted silence, I resumed, "Listen, Lucy. If we persist in our relationship and simply brush this under the rug as you propose, we will never revert to our former selves. You shattered the trust and emotional bond we shared. Above all else, our affection for each other and the kids was unwavering. We always ensured no harm came to anyone else. I never imagined you'd cause me pain, Mark. I love you. A grievous error was made, and I'm willing to take any steps to rectify it. Divorce as a means of assertion is not an option. You wounded my heart and posed threats. Such actions are not befitting of someone truly in love." Stricken with silence, Lucy seemed at a loss for words. "The children need our attention. I believe they're better off in divided households rather than dysfunctional ones. Therefore, from this perspective, divorce seems the most viable solution. I concede that you'll likely gain custody, but please do not prevent me from visiting them. It will benefit you as well." They respond to me. "You struggle with setting boundaries. I find it ironic that you comment on this, and they are already testing your resolve. It would be best for both of us and the children if you allow me to remain in their lives." Lucy sighed heavily in contemplation. "Lucy, regardless of the circumstances, don't prevent me from seeing our children. Don't distance me. I'm not a villain. I care for them deeply and treat them kindly. You haven't witnessed my anger yet. I will persist in this fight to the end, exhausting our resources on lawyers, and we will both suffer in the process," I warned her. She acknowledged, "You would never do that. You are a great father, and they need you." They will want you to continue taking them on trips and coaching them in various sports, she said. I glanced at her, taken aback by the initial comment that seemed genuine, without an attempt to control me or defend your actions. Be cautious, Lucy. You're veering off course seriously, even though you know who I am. Why do this? I can only assume that on some level you wanted us to part ways. God forbid, Lucy said urgently. There is no justification for this. I became selfish, convinced myself I could gain more. It seemed to me that I could hold on to you somehow. Why didn't you intervene that night and depart instead? I was suffocating and had to leave. Later, it felt inconsequential. The fact that you were intent on another man by any means made it clear that I had already lost you. This discussion spelled our doom long before you reached his bed. Maybe it was all over when you first began plotting. You spent weeks conversing with him and making preparations. Letting you go and not compelling you to halt makes it simpler to terminate everything. There's no going back, and that was the start of our end. The marriage disintegrated in less than 4 days. We divorced, luckily, without requiring counseling. I believe Lucy didn't wish to account for her actions. On one hand, it's unfortunate. I had hoped a competent individual could demonstrate her errors. She did keep one promise, and in the end, we spent roughly equal amounts of time with the children. She even conceded to them that everything was her fault without elaborating. The children were mature enough to comprehend decisions and frequently chose their residences. At that stage, parents transformed into frequent taxi services and lenders. Despite my bias, I believe they are exceptional kids who handled the divorce admirably. Children can prove surprisingly resilient. In our divorce settlement, Lucy retained custody of our home until the children reached adulthood, allowing her to sell or buy it later. Yet, I desired this arrangement for the children and facilitated their continued education at the same school. Luckily, the decision proved beneficial. When the children went to college, property prices significantly increased. Lucy was compelled to purchase my share, making it the most profitable investment of my life. How could she manage this? She had $250,000 left from our divorce settlement. Like with Charlotte, I couldn't maintain an ethical superiority. I am pragmatic by nature. Ultimately, it seemed a negligible cost compared to the expenses and once happy life of marriage. I left my job with a settlement instead of facing an employment tribunal, then launched a web design enterprise. Despite Lucy's efforts to reconcile, I was uninterested. Was it wise to end the relationship? It was chaotic, with no clear victors, but the anticipated threats and repercussions didn't come to pass. That night remained etched in my memory, and there's a sense of self-worth in appreciating the person staring back from the mirror. Just now, here is another story for you. I could possibly be the initial case in the annals of troubled marriages to express gratitude towards my wife's paramour via a thank you card. Indeed, I did. Generally, I am hardly susceptible to illnesses, but that week at work, a highly contagious strain of flu was spreading like wildfire, and I found myself displaying its telltale symptoms rather publicly on a Thursday morning. To prevent the entire office from falling prey, my boss graciously sent me home early. It was roughly midday, and I anticipated that my wife, Beth, would be able to tenderly care for me, procure the necessary chicken soup, monitor my temperature, and attend to me before retiring me to bed. Upon reaching the street where I resided and approaching my house, I spotted a green pickup truck parked in the driveway. At that moment, nothing in particular crossed my mind other than the severity of how ill I felt. The vehicle was unfamiliar, as it occupied the usual parking spot of my rundown SUV, so I parked by the curb instead. Entering through the garage, which led directly into the kitchen, I encountered a sight that stunned me. There was no trace of Beth in the kitchen or living room. A sensation unrelated to the flu started gnawing at my stomach, escalating as I neared the back of the house where our bedroom lay, hearing unmistakable sounds of intimacy. Approaching the door, slightly ajar, I peeked inside. There she was, on all fours, with an unfamiliar man kneeling behind her, vigorously engaging in intercourse. Her moans suggested she was enjoying it immensely. "Oh God, fuck me," she cried out. "Come on, give it to me." The man responded with inarticulate grunts. They were so engrossed in their act that they didn't notice the door opening. I stood there, feeling an odd mix of emotions. One part of me was impelled to burst in and disrupt them, while another remained indifferent. It's worth noting that I wasn't aroused by the scene. For as long as I loved Beth, seeing someone I cared for be unfaithful wasn't stimulating if one's mental state is average. Despite my past disregard for fidelity, witnessing their betrayal in an instant changed my future's course. In the blink of an eye, as Beth and her boyfriend climaxed, I had a revelation, a clear insight into my life's direction. I made a choice then that my life was improving. I retrieved my phone, opened the door, switched it to camera mode, and captured several sharp images of the surprised couple. Having obtained visual proof of Beth's infidelity and her lover's, I turned and exited the house as I had entered. On my way out of the garage, I picked up a screwdriver and punctured 2 tires on his truck with it immature, but the least I could retaliate. Drove my SUV away, noting the pickup's license plate before departure. The day marked a new chapter. As I meandered aimlessly, my thoughts returned to the events unfolding minutes ago, acknowledging that this deception had been festering for some time. Uncertain if Beth's infidelity was an initial transgression or part of a series, I no longer cared to know. After all, I was Peter Thornhill, 48 years old, and married to Beth for 2 decades. Our love once burning passionately, it was as if we fell in love at first sight. We crossed paths not long after my college graduation and my employment with a prominent manufacturing corporation nestled in a mid-sized Midwestern city. Raised in western Nebraska, I yearned to reside near the mountains, a frequent haunt during my childhood years. My spouse, Beth, hailed from the city where we had spent our entire marital existence. It's hard to pinpoint exactly when our relationship began to deteriorate. It was an insidious and protracted decline, not immediately apparent to outsiders, but undeniably present. The final stages were marked by dreams, and mine involved residing in the mountains and penning the great American novel. I suspect Beth's primary dream was merely to secure a husband and raise a family in her hometown. As dreams often do, ours crumbled upon the harsh rocks of reality. For me, this meant being trapped in an unremarkable Midwestern town, crafting computer software for the same company I joined post-college. Eventually, I reached a certain level within the corporation, and then found myself overshadowed by more ambitious individuals. My predicament stemmed from my unwillingness to compromise and my dedication to excellence at work, as I disdained those who opted for shortcuts. Additionally, I excelled in my professional role, making me indispensable, yet this proficiency hindered my promotion prospects, despite regular pay increases and occasional bonuses. Another aspect of my predicament was my laid-back nature. Content with conformity, this trait extended to my marital life. Let me clarify, Beth was an attractive woman with dark, glossy hair and a voluptuous physique, whom I had always adored. Despite her retaining some postpartum weight, I still found her seductive. Regrettably, another admirer also saw her that way. Not long after our wedding, we purchased a house in a respectable neighborhood, albeit not the exclusive district. Constructed in the 1960s, the house harbored appliances untouched over the decades. Gradually, we swapped out one device for another haphazardly. There was an endless cycle of repairing and mending. We'd often discuss upgrading, but after repeatedly refinancing mortgages to secure loans, we realized the house was priced beyond our reach for resale. Essentially, repaying the loan amount was more than the property's actual value. Selling it at a lower price as a fixer-upper wouldn't have resolved the issue of finding an affordable new home. Additionally, there was the challenge posed by our children. 3 years into our marriage, we had a son, Jason, followed by a daughter, Laura. These kids were almost like the offspring in the animal kingdom that sometimes become dinner for their parents. In my efforts to instill discipline, Beth, on the contrary, indulged them excessively, refusing to let me punish any misbehavior. The outcomes were severe. Jason turned out to be indolent, disrespectful, and untidy. Laura exhibited signs of neurotic tendencies and excessive sexual behavior. They learned at a young age how to manipulate us for their desires, thus leading us to lose authority over them. By the time they reached their teenage years, Jason was on the verge of losing his sixth minimum wage job due to his tardiness and poor appearance, which employers seemed to find important. He resided in a rundown house in town with three other idle companions, and I suspected he was at least using marijuana frequently and drinking excessively. Laura was on the verge of dropping out from high school due to her constant distraction with earphones, making it hard for her to focus during classes. She also had a boyfriend from college, heavily inked all over his arms. Beth was a nurse and eventually opted to work night shifts. Upon her working days, I'd return home around 5:30 p.m., sometimes sharing a meal before she departed for work at around 6:15 p.m. With our contrasting schedules, we started spending less time together, leading to a decrease in intimacy. We would engage physically once or twice monthly, usually weekends when she was off. It was never unpleasant, but it had become routine. We followed the usual pattern with me taking charge, and sessions tended to be brief. Rarely, Beth displayed initiative, but such instances grew scarce over time. 18 months prior to the event, Beth's demeanor started changing significantly. Despite her occasional mood swings, menopause seemed to affect her severely. She began to evade intimacy with me, citing excuses such as headaches, fatigue, or going to bed earlier than expected. Additionally, she became more critical, pointing out flaws in my actions or omissions. In retrospect, the indications were there, but I failed to notice them. I would often call the house during work hours, only to find no response. At times, she'd socialize with coworkers at a bar catering to night workers. Occasionally, she'd return home on weekends following work, immediately starting a load of laundry, as if hiding something before I could notice it. All signs suggested Beth was unfaithful, but as mentioned earlier, it made little difference. Reviewing the situation, I found myself trapped in a monotonous job in an unremarkable town. My home was run down and overpriced. My sex life was lacking, my wife, with her witchy ways, was unfaithful, and my children were heading down the wrong path. What would one do? Well, I did what I thought best. To begin with, I visited a walk-in clinic to address my flu symptoms. After receiving a steroid injection and an antibiotic prescription, I proceeded to Walmart to get my medication filled and purchase essential items such as toiletries, a hot plate, a small pot, soup, and soft drinks. Next, I drove across town and rented a motel room using cash withdrawn from the bank before shopping. Once settled in, I drafted a strategy for the coming days while heating a can of soup, ate as much as possible, stored the rest in the mini fridge, climbed into bed, and slept deeply. At midnight, I stirred awake, disoriented until recalling my location and purpose. My body was still weak from the flu, and my state of illness coupled with the shock of finding Beth in such a condition prevented me from fully comprehending the events. I warmed the remaining soup, drank a Sprite, and watched a football match on TV before returning to sleep. Upon waking up, my phone screen displayed a dozen calls from Beth. I gave a grim smile at that. Let her worry, I mused. The following day, I felt much improved. My first action was phoning the office to inform them of my absence. When my boss's secretary answered, I revealed my reasons, and she informed me that Beth had been calling all afternoon searching for me. She did, I replied. If she calls today, as I expect she will, just tell her I'm sick and won't be in today. That should at least relieve the pressure on you. Pete, she questioned, where are you? Allow me to clarify, I initiated. I'm currently not residing at my usual abode. Understood, she replied, and we disconnected. It was clear that I had communicated my homeless status. After considerable contemplation, I found myself growing more content with this decision. I could hardly blame Beth. Her intentions were clearly manifest. She no longer wished to be my spouse. It seemed she sought something I couldn't provide, whatever that may be, and I chose not to hinder her pursuit of it. If she desired other men, so be it. I would grant her the autonomy and in doing so, liberate myself as well. However, there were still actions to take. Both Beth and her paramour would face repercussions, nothing catastrophic, but consequences nevertheless. The initial step was contacting the motor vehicle department to inquire about purchasing a pickup truck. lost the owner's phone number, but retained the license plate number, truck model, and color. A helpful woman provided the man's name and address over the phone. I contacted my lawyer friend to obtain the details of the top divorce attorney in the city. I addressed this individual as a lady and scheduled an appointment for 1 p.m. that day. After showering, I visited the lobby for a light breakfast before proceeding to the bank. 2 certificates of deposit purchased years ago were cashed, along with half of the savings account funds and half of the meager checking account balance. Most of the money was deposited into a newly opened checking account under my sole name, accompanied by a debit card. I left with approximately $4,000 in traveler's checks. Spent the following minutes canceling most credit cards, keeping one solely in my name, and paying off the balances of the others, except for the one left for Beth. I decided not to pay it off. Dealt with it later would be on her. Then visited a public library branch, bought computer time, emailed and printed 4 cell phone images onto an email account, creating 2 copies of each. Images were clear and explicit. Searched for Clark Slater, who was with my wife the day prior. Learned he was married, noted his wife's name. Placed a copy of the pictures with a note into an envelope addressed to his wife, including contact information. Mailed it at the post office using stamps. It was my turn to meet Grace Shaw, the lawyer. I shared with her my actions and my intentions, which she simply acknowledged by nodding. Upon showing her the photographs, however, her initial concern was prudence. Divorce appears to be a rather extreme measure on such short notice, she remarked. Aren't you considering giving it another try? I retorted. What's left to reconcile? My wife is involved with someone else, and I have no intention of impeding true love. I have destinations to visit and dreams to pursue with my life, and living here with a deceitful spouse isn't in those plans. Ultimately, I consented to a 90-day legal separation. The divorce documents were drafted, and if after 3 months I was still resolute about terminating my marriage, then the papers would be submitted and Beth would be notified. Grace inquired about your desired arrangement upon the divorce proceeding. What terms are you looking for? You responded, explaining that you had already claimed half of our joint savings. She can retain her 403B from work, you added, but she's not entitled to any portion of my 401K. Furthermore, you suggested she could keep the house since the mortgage is in her name and you have no interest in it. Should she sell the property, however, you expect half of the sales proceeds. I believe that's all, Grace acknowledged, mentioning she would contact you in approximately 3 months. My next destination was the Human Resources Department. Inquiring about early retirement, I learned that with my 26 years of service, I had accrued a substantial pension. I was informed that I could start drawing from it when I turned 60, which is still 12 years away. Frowned at the suggestion, but perked up upon discussing cashing out my 401K. The HR representative advised against it due to the substantial tax penalty involved. However, she mentioned that if I insisted, I could receive around $65,000 instantly. I thanked her and returned to my hotel. Exhausted, I prepared another pot of chicken soup, went to bed, and slept for nearly 7 hours. It was past midnight when I woke up, facing the most challenging part of my day, returning to the house and gathering my belongings. Beth was expected to be at work, but I wasn't certain if she had shown up. As it turned out, she hadn't. Beth was asleep when I entered quietly, and the house was still. It seemed that Laura was worried about my whereabouts and had gone out, as she usually did on Friday nights. I pondered if the children would notice my absence at all. Likely not. I retrieved necessary items from the garage: tools, camping gear, and various useful items. I then moved to the office area to grab my laptop. After plugging it in and transferring files from my home PC, I carried it to my vehicle. 2 boxes accompanied me, containing CDs, a portable player, numerous books, and personal items of significance, excluding photographs of Beth. Upon filling my vehicle with these items, I retrieved suitcases and stepped quietly into my old bedroom, where I was halfway through packing. A soft gasp echoed behind me, followed by Beth's voice. "Peter, where have you been?" She expressed concern. "I've been worried sick about you." Trying to conceal my anger, I responded, "What are you doing?" To which she replied, "Beth," and added, "What does it look like I'm doing?" "Packing." "You deserve a gold star for your brilliance," I commented. "Beth, I apologize so sincerely," she started. I interrupted her, saying, "I don't need your excuses or apologies. The specifics aren't important to me. Do you want to be with someone else?" "Go ahead and do so," was my response. "But I don't love him." "I don't desire him," she said next. "I love you," she continued. "I don't want him." "I want you," was my reply. "It seemed to me like you desired him quite strongly yesterday afternoon." "Let me remind you of your words then." "Oh, crud." That about sums it up. Beth merely hid her face in her hands, weeping profusely. I looked at her directly. The brief anger I felt dissipated, leaving me with an emotion that was hard to pinpoint, perhaps a mix of pity, contempt, and disgust. Mostly, though, I sensed a profound emptiness. In that instant, I understood that I harbored no affection for her. I no longer cared. I completed packing as she wept into her pillow. Only when I stepped out of the bedroom with my luggage did she jump off the bed and try to prevent me. "Wait," Beth wailed. "Don't abandon me." "Pete, can't we resolve this?" "Please, I apologize." It was merely physical intimacy that had transpired between us. I remained silent as I gently freed myself from her grasping arms and walked towards the front of the house. Beth pursued me, sobbing uncontrollably. I indicated the notice of legal separation on the kitchen table amidst the leftovers of our dinner. "I'll be back in 3 months, by mid-December," I said. "If my thoughts remain as they are now, I will proceed with a divorce. I will inform you of my general whereabouts, but I am leaving and I have not yet decided on my destination. Farewell, Beth." Beth exclaimed, "Pete, no," as I left with my luggage through the front door. I ignored her and got into my vehicle, driving away across town towards my motel room. Since it was Saturday, I spent the day in bed. When I finally woke up, I packed up the motel room belongings and checked out. The motel was pricey at $85 per night, so I found a cheaper alternative near my office that catered to business travelers with long-term rates. For around $45 each night, I rented a clean room for 2 weeks, complete with a mini kitchen, internet access, cable TV, and pay-per-view adult films if desired. I did watch some adult content on the TV, but mainly spent my weekend relaxing and watching football. Monday morning found me back at work. Initially, I stepped into my superior's office and presented him with my resignation letter, effective within 2 weeks. The news left the entire office in shock, considering my lengthy tenure there. My boss, to put it mildly, was frantic. He spent those fortnight attempting to dissuade me from retiring, yet I stood firm. During the first week's Tuesday, a phone call arrived from my daughter. Our conversation shed some light. "Daddy, why are you leaving us?" Laura inquired. "You should ask your mother that," I responded. "She told me to ask you," Laura said. "All right," I replied. By Thursday afternoon, I found her in bed with another man. My flu-stricken state had me leave work early, and there she was. I have the photographs to confirm it. "Wow," Laura exclaimed. "I didn't think she had such inclinations." Apparently, that explains her frequent tears. "Daddy, she's a wreck. She just sits around weeping and abusing herself. She was absent for the entire weekend due to illness. I told her firmly, 'You need to pull yourself together.' It seems like she believes she can manipulate me into returning by making me feel guilty. I've already submitted my retirement application, and in less than a week, I'll be leaving. Once I'm gone, whatever she does, what you do, or the actions of your irresponsible brother are no longer my concern." "I love you too, Dad," Laura exclaimed tearfully. "Why do you never care about me?" "Why should I start now?" I retorted. "You're just afraid the good times might be coming to an end." "That's not true," Laura said quietly. "I need you. Only you have any common sense in this house, and I don't know what will happen without you." "Don't worry, you'll manage," I said. "I apologize for my harsh words earlier. They were unkind of me. I'll contact you and return for Christmas, all right?" "I truly love you," she said. "I understand, Dad," she replied, sniffling. "I love you as well." Jason didn't reach out. I had a rather busy fortnight. Beth attempted contact multiple times, but after disconnecting several of her calls, she understood my reluctance to converse. Her colleagues at work encouraged me to meet with her, but I declined firmly and made it clear in strong terms. It transpired that Clark Slater was a nurse on the ward where Beth worked, and they had been together for approximately 6 months. Most people I spoke to believed he was likely the only one she'd been unfaithful with, though they weren't entirely certain. I made it clear to everyone how much I valued their information about my wife's clandestine activities. They had little to say after that. During the first week, I received a call from Clark Slater's spouse. It seemed Beth wasn't the initial nurse, married or not, he had been involved with, but she would be the last, at least while he was her husband. I provided her with sufficient evidence to make him terminate their relationship. Strangely, neither Clark nor he mentioned Beth or his damaged tires. Before I could depart, I had several tasks to complete. These included training a substitute for my position until they found a permanent replacement, having my 12-year-old car serviced, finding a broker to manage my 401k in a private account, discussing severance pay and cashing out my remaining sick days with HR, and utilizing my free time by watching TV, browsing on my laptop, or shopping for items needed for my journey. I also socialized with several friends who questioned Beth's alleged infidelity. After only a short while, the second Friday, my last day at work, approached, bringing with it a small pang of remorse. I had worked there for 26 years and formed many friendships. During lunchtime, my manager convened our department, and we celebrated a small retirement gathering. It was then that I crumbled emotionally. I struggled to deliver a speech of gratitude when I unexpectedly started sobbing, the first time in years that I had shed tears over anything. I cried not only because I was leaving, but also due to the events leading up to my decision to retire. The past 2 weeks had been filled with work, and I hadn't allowed myself to express the emotions stirred by Beth's infidelity. Seeing my coworkers celebrating me proved too overwhelming. However, I soon regained my composure, particularly when Marcy Glover approached me and suggested an after-work get-together at Chili's with a few of them. Naturally, I accepted her invitation, even though I made it clear that I don't drink. Marcy was a fellow tech enthusiast, but she was quite attractive for a geek. In her mid-30s, a tall blonde divorcee with an adolescent daughter away for the weekend resided. As she shared this fact, a gaze smoldered at me that left me perplexed. Despite my youthful appearance and lack of studmuffin characteristics, I was taller than average at around 5'9", glasses wearing, somewhat paunchy, and not particularly fitness-focused. I soon discovered that I possessed a charm beyond what I thought. Among the gathering of 7 individuals, 3 females and 2 males, aside from Marcy and myself, I found myself being the center of attention. We spent hours socializing over beer while I sipped tea, sharing tales about the town, the plant, and each other. Amid the celebration, we also took time for dinner. As the evening progressed, I found myself seated next to Marcy, who appeared to be making advances towards me. She moved closer, touching my thigh or arm, leaving me uncertain if it was merely due to her intoxication or a genuine intention. Around 9, we began to part ways. Desiring an early start the following day, I stood up to leave. Turning back to Marcy, I realized she was unfit to drive home. I offered her a ride. Following farewell hugs and handshakes, I escorted Marcy to my car. Upon entering, she drew near, touching my thigh, gazing at me intensely. "I'm not that drunk," Marcy confessed. "I didn't just want to ride home. I wanted you to take me." "Where should I drop you off?" I feigned ignorance. "At your motel," she replied, pulling my head towards her and kissing me passionately. "Marcy, this isn't necessary," I remarked when we parted ways. "I'm lonely, but I don't want pity." "This isn't about pity," she replied. "Ever since I started working there, I've had feelings for you, and now I have a chance." "I'm not backing down," I said. "But Marcy, consider me. I'm an overweight, gray-haired older man." "First off, you're not overweight," she countered. "Secondly, your hair gives you a sexy appearance." Thirdly, you are quite attractive, and fourthly, you're one of the kindest men I know," she added. "You're one of the few men in that building who haven't made advances towards me or any other women." "We've noticed your gentlemanly behavior," I acknowledged. "I've always been a married gentleman," I said, with a hint of bitterness. "Tomorrow you're leaving, and you deserve some affection before you go," Marcy stated. "Have you decided to return to your motel and engage in an intimate moment with me or not?" Laughing then, I ignited my vehicle. Although I've often fantasized about Marcy Glover, I assumed she was beyond my reach. Moreover, as a married man committed to faithfulness, it never seemed feasible. Technically, I suppose I'm still married, but I'm already separated legally, and in my heart, I knew my marriage had ended. Marcy Glover presented me with an opportunity that I couldn't refuse. As soon as the door to my room closed, we were instantly attracted to each other, passionately kissing, our hands exploring one another. It wasn't long before I admired Marcy's slender silhouette on the bed. Her presence was captivating. I was prepared for this moment. It had been more than a week since my last true release, so I eagerly anticipated what was to transpire. This encounter felt distinctive, as Marcy showed more enthusiasm than I had experienced before, at least in previous experiences. We embraced in sync, lost in mutual delight, focusing on each other's happiness. The excitement escalated on Marcy's face as she neared another pinnacle of bliss. I reclined on the bed, watching as Marcy readjusted herself for what was to follow. "Thanks," I murmured. "Beth wouldn't approve. She deemed it disrespectful." "I can understand why some women might think so," Marcy responded. "However, I find great pleasure in it." We relaxed on the bed after that and made love again, this time at a slower pace. Following that, we dozed off together. We made love one last time as the soft light of dawn illuminated the curtains. Then we showered, dressed, and Marcy assisted me in packing. Before she departed, she bestowed a gentle kiss on me and gazed deep into my eyes. "Pete," she said, "all I can say is your wife doesn't know what she's missing out on. I admittedly grew accustomed to your presence and found myself in a routine," I stated. "Perhaps I allowed certain issues to persist on my end. You understand the situation." "Indeed, I think I do," Marcy replied. "Pete, I wish you success in your search. If at any point you choose to return here for an extended duration, reach out to me. I assure you, I'll offer you far better treatment than Beth did." "Thank you, Marcy," I responded. "I'll keep you updated. One never knows what the future holds. Take care, all right?" "You too," she responded. "Stay safe." With that, I departed. I positioned my vehicle on the interstate heading west and didn't glance back. I was embarking alone on a journey across the country without any set plans, itinerary, or purpose. There were certain Western locations I wished to visit, things I desired to accomplish, but I had no specific timeline. I would go wherever my instincts guided me. It was something I'd longed to do for years, yet never managed due to financial constraints, family obligations, or work-related matters. Previously, I lacked any hindrances. My initial plan led me to revisit my childhood town, seeking time with aging parents and catching up with old friends. Unexpectedly, I ran into one such friend, Dolores Valdez, a classmate from school who was a year behind me, but often shared classes. Although she was an attractive woman too swift for me in the past, time had softened her pace. While my parents were disheartened to learn about my separation with Beth, my mom stated she wasn't surprised by my apparent unhappiness during recent visits. In the supermarket on Monday, picking up supplies for my journey, I heard my name called and turned to find Dolores Valdez, a memory from my past. My face broke into a broad smile upon seeing her. She learned that a swift lifestyle wasn't always beneficial, yet time remained kind to her as she retained her stone-like beauty. In fact, age seemed to enhance her looks, smoothing out her features and adding subtle curves in tactical spots. She was shorter than average, with thick, dark hair and expressive brown eyes. Her figure still exuded sexiness. Following her divorce from her second husband, she returned to town and became an assistant manager at the store. She resided alone in a modest house in a tranquil neighborhood not far from her daughter's family. We conversed for a while, discussing our lives. When I mentioned my upcoming divorce, her eyes sparkled. "I'm free tomorrow," she suggested in a welcoming tone. "Would you fancy having dinner with me?" "I would," I replied. "Any preferred location?" she responded. "How about at my place?" It's been some time since I prepared dinner for a man, particularly an old friend such as you. The following evening, around 7, I found myself at Dolores's residence. She was attired in a fitted red dress with spaghetti straps and her face subtly adorned. My younger brother, residing nearby, had handed me a Viagra tablet upon my disclosure of the individual I was visiting. He predicted that it would be necessary, and his prediction seemed accurate. Upon entering her compact yet tidy abode, I was greeted by the aroma of enchiladas baking in the oven, along with various other Mexican delicacies being prepared for dinner. As I soon discovered, Dolores proved to be an exceptional cook. However, I also found that she possessed remarkable skills in conversation. While we waited for dinner to finish cooking, we conversed intimately in her living room, reacquainting ourselves with each other's lives. She displayed great empathy towards my circumstances and those of Beth as well. Dolores, having experienced infidelity in both her marriages, one from herself and the other from her partner, shared insights from both perspectives. This didn't ease my distress, but it was helpful. The meal was extraordinary, featuring enchiladas, tostadas, rice, and a delectable flan that surpassed any I'd previously tasted. Inquiring about her weight maintenance despite such delicious cooking, I commented on my distended stomach. "I only prepare meals like this for special occasions," Dolores chuckled in response. "If I ate this way daily, I'd be as broad as I am tall." Afterward, we moved to the living room and sat closely on the couch once more. We conversed for a while before she disclosed the reason behind my invitation that evening. "I wanted to do something I couldn't back when we were in high school," she admitted. "You were always so kind, attractive, and sexy, but I knew I could never have you then. In contrast to what my parents would have disapproved of, you don't seem to share their prejudices regarding my dating a white man. It's quite ironic, quite sad. They were fine with me being with numerous Mexican thugs and gang members, but a decent white guy? Not at all. But you don't seem to have that issue, do you?" As I moved closer, our lips met, and I was consumed by her full, passionate lips and vigorous tongue. Dolores acted as if she hadn't been with anyone in a long time, which made me smile. She became emotional when I asked her how long it had been since she last had a man. "Too long," she said. "Upon returning here, I vowed not to let my past draw me into foolish relationships, but old memories linger in small towns. If I were paid $5 for each time someone from school has approached me in the past year, I wouldn't need a job. That's what makes this so significant to me. In the past, you never treated me disrespectfully, and there would have been no inappropriate actions on your part if not for my invitation. I assure you that's true," you said. "But I can't help but imagine things," I replied, chuckling. "In high school, believe it or not, I had many fantasies involving you." Those words seemed to soften you. You murmured something in Spanish and then proceeded to kiss me passionately, running your hands all over my body. In a flash, my sweater was off and so was the shirt beneath it. Your actions followed swiftly, undoing my pants in no time. Suddenly, I found myself on your sofa, with you standing before me, unzipping your dress. As it fell to the floor, I couldn't help but admire your striking appearance. The contrast between your dark hair and pale skin was captivating, especially given your choice of a garter belt, hosiery, and heels. As you leaned in to kiss me eagerly, I gently touched you. She expressed her desire for me with fervor, a sentiment I eagerly reciprocated. Hearing such words from Dolores, following my encounter with Marcy, elevated my self-assurance, confirming that I still possessed appeal. Dolores passionately kissed me and breathed her desires in my ear, yearning for our proximity. It's never been a question of denying a desirable woman what she wants. Once sated, I lifted myself off, then fell onto her, laughing with complete satisfaction. That moment was the first time I considered expressing gratitude to Clark Slater for orchestrating the series of events that led me to that point. Thanks to Clark and his scandalous affair with my wife, I was liberated from my monotonous life in a nondescript town, an unfulfilling marriage, chaotic home life in a deteriorating house, and a job devoid of stimulation in a corporation where I was lost amidst the crowd. I enjoyed unfettered freedom to roam, act, and associate as I pleased. Such liberty would have gnawed at my conscience otherwise, given the discovery of my wife Dolores and her paramour engaged in adultery. Post-haste, we found ourselves relaxing in her expansive bathtub, an opulent indulgence she'd embraced upon returning to town. We immersed ourselves there for quite some time, washing each other and exchanging passionate kisses. Eventually, we made love once more within the confines of the tub before relocating to her bed for another loving session, our exhaustion finally overcoming us. The following day found me reuniting with my family, followed by a determined start on the second day. As I navigated the road ahead, I mused that precisely 3 weeks had elapsed since the revelation of Beth and Clark's infidelity, a span of time that redefined my life in its entirety. This journey marked the commencement of my new existence. Over the ensuing 3 months, I traversed the western half of the country, discovering places previously known only through literature. Initially, I visited Mount Rushmore, then spent a couple of days delving into the Battle of Little Bighorn's battleground. I wandered the site, felt the presence of Custer, the 7th Cavalry, Crazy Horse, and his warriors. Subsequently, I journeyed to Jackson Hole, camped there for nearly 2 weeks while traipsing through Yellowstone and the Grand Tetons. The first glimpse of the Tetons had me chuckling, thinking that the French who named them must have run short of female breasts to depict in those pointed peaks. Post that, I drove northwards, staying by Lake Pendlesil for a spell. As a teenager at a Boy Scout jamboree in 1969, I had been there before, with few Americans witnessing the first moon landing due to our distance from television sets. During my stay, I fished the lake and trekked its trails, appreciating the serene northern Rockies peaks. On a chilly October morn, discovering 3 inches of snow outside, I recognized it was time for a transition to milder climes. My journey led me to Seattle, then south along the Pacific coast through Oregon, eventually reaching Napa Valley for a while. Indeed, I indulged in some exceptional wine the region offers before migrating towards Yosemite for a few days. Following this, I paid a visit to my elderly relatives in the Los Angeles region and fulfilled a years-long aspiration of witnessing Southern Cal face UCLA at the Rose Bowl, a notable college football rivalry in one of the country's most storied stadiums. Additionally, I spent a day relaxing on Venice Beach, appreciating the multitude of athletic Californians parading around scantily dressed. Whilst browsing a souvenir shop adjacent to the beach, I encountered a postcard and had a mischievous thought to send it to my wife and her companion. 4 graceful, minimally dressed women were depicted with the title "Salutations from Venice Beach." In response, I penned a message to each, expressing gratitude for their mischief enabling my trip, and sent one to Beth's residence, another to Clark's hospital. This occurred during the weekend prior to Thanksgiving. My desire was to proceed to where I truly wished to be, Durango, Colorado, a stunning mountain town near Four Corners. My high school friend resided there, and he and his spouse had launched a small enterprise needing expertise in computer marketing and related online tasks. It suited me perfectly. He owned a small house he'd been renting out, offering accommodations for my stay. Additionally, he provided a flexible work schedule allowing travel freedom whenever desired. I had utilized my extra hours on the road to write extensively, and the seeds of a promising book were taking shape. I detailed my personal experiences, my journey, and the reasons behind it, as well as other relevant reflections. Upon wrapping up affairs with Beth and settling in Colorado, I would have ample time to refine my work. The narrative revolved around the transformations in a midlife due to one catastrophic event. I was unaware that my life was on the verge of another surprising shift as I traveled east toward Colorado on Monday. Unbeknownst to me, my life would undergo yet another unexpected alteration. After spending a couple of days in Durango, Chris, Kyle's wife, informed us that she had invited a friend to share Thanksgiving dinner with us. This woman lived alone, Chris explained, and was not very sociable, but Chris couldn't stand the idea of someone being alone on Thanksgiving, so she extended the invitation, and it was accepted. It's amusing how life can be influenced by small decisions such as that. Perhaps I would have encountered Maureen McDermott eventually once I relocated to Durango, but who knows what might have transpired in the meantime. Maybe she would have chosen to leave, or possibly another might have claimed her heart first. I can't say for certain. What I do know is that when Maureen stepped into Kyle and Chris's house, my stomach jolted, and by the end of the day, I was resolved to claim her for myself. Maureen was a woman in her mid-30s, standing almost 6 feet tall, lean but not frail. Her skin was pale and speckled with freckles, her fiery red hair cropped short, and her eyes were a captivating mix of mischief and sadness, the color of soft emeralds. When she spoke, it seemed like a melody of leprechauns. Yes, she was a native of Ireland, born and bred, who had come to America with an Irish dance group, one of those Riverdance ensembles, and had settled in Denver. She had moved to Durango approximately a year ago, following the dissolution of her engagement just 2 days before the wedding. She unexpectedly found her future husband engaged with a stripper at his bachelor party. Initially, she didn't plan to gatecrash the event, but after her own celebration, she and some friends were on their way for breakfast when they passed by a strip club and noticed her fiancé exiting with his group. One of the strippers was clinging to her intended spouse, leading her to trail them to discover the truth. This incident added to an already emotionally charged life that had endured numerous hardships. Her father, an alcoholic, physically abused her mother, prompting their escape at age 15. After he began to assault her, she recounted, her father pursued them relentlessly until the police intervened, charging and convicting him for spousal abuse. She suffered an assault during her holiday in London when she was 22 and experienced numerous heartbreaks afterward, including infidelity from her fiancé. I believe we connected deeply because we both grasped the concept of infidelity. During our travels, I've pondered a lot about Beth and her actions, and I couldn't reconcile her expressions of love for me with the mental picture of her with another man. Beth was unfaithful in our marriage, and I remained puzzled about why this happened. Although I maintained that I didn't mind, it wasn't entirely accurate. I did care. I sought to understand what transpired between us, the love we once cherished, and why Beth believed she could have an affair knowing my stance on monogamy. I remained informed of happenings at home, mainly through emails exchanged with Laura, who seemed intent on mending our relationship. Beth was evidently distressed over Jason, having lost his job, and imploring her for remittance. I interacted briefly with Beth on 2 occasions, however. I interjected whenever she became emotional or attempted to express regret. I did assure her that I would listen to her once I returned. Although it wouldn't alter the situation, I wished to hear her perspective. My resolve remained unshaken. By this point, I had decided on my desired location, which was Durango. Consequently, I spent 3 weeks adjusting to my new living environment and aiding Kyle and Chris with their enterprise. Additionally, I spent considerable time with Maureen. On Thanksgiving night, we engaged in lengthy, meaningful conversations that astounded and pleased Chris. Upon walking her out to her car, we shared a kiss. The affection wasn't intense, but the potential was palpable. For about 3 weeks prior to my departure, while it was more aptly my then home, we went on numerous dates with Maureen. Our bond deepened, and she revealed her passionate side. I acknowledged the need for caution given her past encounters with men that left her wounded. However, as I grew acquainted with her, I recognized a fiery spirit beneath her guarded exterior. Her kisses were electrifying, her lips plump enough for delight, and her tongue skilled in its execution. The anticipation was unbearable as my attraction to Maureen intensified. She exuded sexiness, sensuality, and an underlying need. I empathized with her cautious demeanor and admired her wish for a slow progression. Just before my planned return to conclude matters with Beth, my friends Kyle and Chris arranged a 4-day ski trip as a taste of Colorado, aiming to immerse me fully in the experience. A cozy ski resort lies just beyond Durango, with Purgatory nearby, but they wished for me to savor the entire ski adventure. Leveraging a connection in real estate, a friend of theirs secured us a comfortable 2-bedroom condo in Telluride, approximately 70 miles away. One evening before our departure, I was dining with Morin when the trip topic emerged, and she queried about suitable items to pack. I seemed puzzled, prompting her to smile like Mona Lisa. "Were you aware of my attendance?" she inquired. I had hoped, but wasn't certain if it was appropriate for me to extend an invitation, I replied. Given the condo only has 2 bedrooms, I wondered how this would work. "How so?" she asked, her smile broadening. "Is that a definite yes?" I inquired, holding her hands and gazing intently into her eyes. "Absolutely certain," she affirmed. "You were the one I'd been searching for my entire life. From our first encounter, I knew." "Indeed, your instincts are spot on," I replied, expressing my sentiments through touch and gaze. She considered Pete a fine man deserving joy, believing she could bring him happiness. Did this ever occur? On a frosty Thursday morning, we journeyed towards Telluride. The highlands' early winter snowfall was plentiful, predicting excellent skiing conditions, and it did not disappoint. I had only skied once before, during my college days at Vail, while Morin had skied the previous season with Kyle and Chris. Having minimal experience, we heeded advice and enrolled in a one-day ski school prior to venturing solo on the slopes. After learning the fundamentals, Morin and I reveled in scaling and descending the mountain. Prudently avoiding the black slopes or expert trails, we dared several blue trails or intermediate slopes, discovering we could navigate them competently. The thrill of sharing the mountain with a woman I deeply cared for was exhilarating. Uncertain if it was reciprocal love or infatuation, we shared a deep connection and comfort with one another. Our initial day concluded exhausted yet contentedly so, a fatigue stemming from an enjoyable adventure. We subsequently gathered at a cozy, affordable eatery post-skiing, celebrating our burgeoning alliance in all aspects. Upon returning to the condo, I bathed, later retreating onto the expansive waterbed with my book. Contemplating whether to approach Morin, I chose patience, allowing her to initiate. Grateful for my choice, she entered the room scented with peach blossoms, draped in a long, slightly heavy robe. She stood near the door and smiled, gradually untying the sash of her robe and letting it fall open. "Do you find anything appealing?" she inquired, her gentle Irish lilt sounding enticing. I merely nodded, my gaze fixed on Morin's tall and slender physique. I disengaged from the bed and moved towards her, tenderly touching her as we drew near, exchanging a leisurely, passionate kiss that intensified. It seemed surreal as I traced my fingers softly over her body while she peeled off my t-shirt and lowered my pants. We returned to the bed and laid down, our bodies harmonizing effortlessly. Our hands found each other, and unlike previous instances, there was no sense of haste, only an understanding that we had ample time to discover and cherish one another. We resumed kissing, and when we separated, Morin slowly pushed me onto my back and began a leisurely, sensual exploration from my neck to my chest. Her touch was so deliberate, so intimate that it brought me to the brink. I yearned to love this woman entirely. We kissed again, this time with fervor. I gently turned her onto her back. The image of Morin McDermott, eagerly waiting, is etched in my memory forever. She reclined on the bed, her eyes gleaming with passion. As I initiated our intimacy, I took care, desiring a shared climax. We clung to each other, kissing fervently, and it seemed as if we wouldn't cease. Yet, eventually, we did, surrendering to exhaustion, emitting a mutual sigh. Morin and I exchanged soft, contented laughter, descending gradually from the ecstatic heights. We held each other and drifted off to sleep, beginning what I hoped would be countless nights together. The entire trip proceeded in this manner. We experimented with almost every non-black slope on the mountain, perused the stores and cafes of downtown Telluride, and made love every night upon returning to the condo. By the time we arrived in Durango, we were certain it was love. Before Christmas, I loaded my SUV with bags and gifts for all, then journeyed eastward for a few weeks. I passed by my parents' home without delaying, but made a stop to gift Dolores. No overnight stay transpired. I informed her of a woman in Colorado whom I wished to be committed to, and she responded with a knowing smile, "I couldn't expect anything less from you." Marcy Glover conveyed a similar sentiment. Upon returning to town and phoning for dinner, she acknowledged that my single status wouldn't last long, saying, "You're too good of a man to remain unattached for long. I'm glad you're content." The house wasn't mine anymore, so I didn't stay there, intending to avoid giving Beth any false hopes. We exchanged visits in a polite manner, but avoided the obvious tension until after Christmas. In truth, it was an acceptable holiday season. Beth agreed to let Jason return home, but she eventually stood up to him regarding household responsibilities. He could remain, but he was expected to contribute around the house. Previously, he had narrowly avoided significant drug-related issues while living with friends, which seemed to have spurred some wisdom in him as he expressed intentions to enroll in a rehab program. Laura perceived my departure as a signal. She dumped her unsavory boyfriend and became more invested in school, realizing, as I had emphasized during our email conversations, that without at least a high school diploma, her chances of making progress in life were slim. She secured a part-time job at a store catering to youth culture in the mall, where her unique style and trendy demeanor were utilized effectively. The day after Christmas, Laura was working at her job, and I gave Jason $50 for him to enjoy himself at the mall. Beth and I had important matters to address and needed privacy. I placed the divorce petition from Grace Shaw onto the living room coffee table, where Beth sat silently, tears welling in her eyes. She eventually spoke, "It seems you've made your choice." I acknowledged, "Yes, but I need some answers first." Her response was, "Why did you cheat on me?" I countered. "We faced difficulties in our marriage, and had you been more open about it, perhaps we could have overcome them." She replied, "I don't know. I thought you'd stand up for us, fight for our marriage. If there was another who sought your affection, I believed you would do what was necessary to maintain our relationship. However, things went too far. My excessive drinking can't be an excuse. It was a choice I made. I allowed it to happen under the misguided belief that I could momentarily satisfy a fleeting desire and rid myself of this temptation. Honestly, I didn't anticipate you giving up so easily." "What was there left to fight for?" I asked gently. "You were always complaining." Jason was on the brink of incarceration. Laura seemed destined to become a teen mother, living in a disordered home, finding work monotonous. Then, your infidelity added to her woes. Frankly, what was there left to struggle for? And yet, your actions remain puzzling. Why did you stray with another man and persist for half a year? It's something I find hard to comprehend. "A fresh experience," Beth explained. "It was an injection of thrill amidst a tedious life. Perhaps I merely craved more. But Pete, you must trust me when I say I never stopped loving you. You were always my top priority and always will be." "I have no reason to doubt that," I responded. "Yet I'm finding it difficult to believe your love for me, given your dalliances with Clark, particularly when you found ways to avoid intimacy with me. Though you may have been my priority, as you claim, you still seemed overly invested in number two." "I'm deeply sorry for everything," she whispered softly. "It seems I became distracted from what truly mattered." "So, do you despise me now?" I replied. "No, definitely not," I stated. "We shared 24 years together, many of which were good. You're the mother of my children, and I believe, fundamentally, you're a decent person who got misguided and made a heavy mistake." "I don't despise you, Beth, but I no longer love you," she admitted. "The feelings died the day I found you with your lover. Perhaps we just grew apart, and Clark took advantage of it. Surprisingly, I owe you thanks. What you did ignited a spark that enabled me to live a new life, pursuing things I've always wanted to do in places I've always desired," she explained. "Indeed, you seem content with your new life," she acknowledged. "You deserve happiness, don't you? And doesn't it seem fair that I should be miserable instead?" I mused as I watched Beth break down. I didn't want to, but I approached her then and held her one last time, allowing her to cry. Following her composure, she affixed her signature on the divorce settlement. Given our residence in a no-fault jurisdiction and the dissolution due to irreconcilable differences, the divorce would become official after 60 days had elapsed. I lingered for a few additional days to gather the remainder of my belongings and spend time with the children. Despite my concerns about Jason, it appeared that Laura was going to be okay. She had found her place in retail sales and seemed to have developed newfound regard for me. On the penultimate day of the year, I bid farewell and set off to establish myself permanently in Durango. That transpired 3 years ago. Kyle's business flourished during this period, and I encountered a range of tasks that kept me engaged. I dedicated considerable time polishing my book, and upon completing what I believed was a complete work, I began seeking publishers. I faced half a dozen refusals before encountering one with appreciation for it. The book garnered positive feedback and entered the lower echelons of bestseller lists, currently in its third printing with steady sales. I am immersed in composing a sequel, a novel centered on Custer, while my computer is filled with miscellaneous writings that may or may not see publication. Regardless, this creative outlet offers an unparalleled experience compared to my past. Morin and I have grown even closer, tying the knot 8 months following our initial encounter in a modest ceremony in Durango. Laura graced our wedding, establishing a rapport with Morin. She advanced to store management and appears to be thriving. A year ago, I was granted another opportunity at parenthood as Morin gave birth to a son. The profound gratitude I hold for this second chance is immeasurable. Beth remains unmarried, though she does date occasionally. She's immersed her life in renovating the house, serving as a distraction during her free time from work. We remain friends and occasionally converse, primarily discussing Jason. His pledge to sobriety faltered, leading him further into the grip of drugs. He's currently imprisoned following a conviction for manufacturing meth with his former roommates for sale. Our relationship fluctuates, yet we manage to maintain some connection. Some argue that adultery is a devastating act that ruins lives, and perhaps in one aspect, it could be accurate. It undoubtedly destroyed my previous life. However, the painful embers of infidelity birthed a new, superior existence for me. I'm now living the dream life I once envisioned while growing up, residing in a place I always desired to inhabit. This wouldn't have transpired if I had remained married to Beth. In a way, she granted me freedom by cheating, allowing me to pursue my own journey. The most effective retaliation lies in living prosperously, and I am doing just that, flourishing thanks to my former spouse and her partner. You've been instrumental in this process. I appreciate it.